Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. How are we?
Doing good, doing good. Listen, we're getting comments. We got people today listening from India, Saudi Arabia, Morocco. I may want to be in Morocco.
I say all places I would like to go visit.
I'm like all places I would like to be at this morning
Right.
when it's chilly here. Well, it's good to be here. It's good to have you with us here, Michael. I was a surprise. I thought you were out today, so I thought it was going to be me alone, but it's great to have you with us. And most importantly, Michael, we haven't talked about this the past couple of weeks, but it's football season.
It is football season.
And I know you're mourning a little bit. Your professional team is not doing as well as you would want them to do right now. And
none of my teams are doing as well.
That's right. And your college team.
It is not a good football season.
I have to say my college team, though, Kentucky, is doing well. We are in the top 10 for the first time in ever. And our coach just became the winningest coach in Kentucky history, which is, not a huge accomplishment because Kentucky has not always had great football teams. So,
and if you're not from Kentucky, you don't understand how that is salt in the wounds of the University of Louisville and makes it 20 times more painful and ridiculous.
Yes. So Michael and I have a love-hate relationship around this right now, for sure.
It is a very painful time in Louisville.
Well, Michael, why don't you share? Well, let me do a couple of announcements, and then you share why we do the show, and then we'll bring our guest up today. Our next show will be on Friday the 30th. And I love this. Whether our personal life or work life, it should always be about the people. Nancy Flowers is Vice President of Insights and Loyalty from Haggerty Insurance. She'll be joining us. This week, we launched Season 7 of the Combustion Chronicles, and we have some amazing – I need to update this now because we have all of our guests, 12 guests this season. And this week's episode was with Mark Rickmeyer, Shaping the Employee Experience, Beyond D&I, Shaping the Employee Experience. You need to listen to this episode. It's so powerful. It's so much more than that. It was hard to put it all in a title. But if you've ever wanted to see a CEO who has transformed a company in thinking, you need to listen to that episode. All right, Michael, why do you and I, we're almost a year now doing Experience Friday Live. And why do we do it, Michael?
Yeah, and not sure we've ever, teed this up the same way. And today I think it's fantastic. We're talking to Amanda because, as you'll see in a little bit, the topic is that CX can actually make a difference in the goals that you set. So if you look at your organization's mission and you look at their vision, whatever they have, especially looking at your organization's values list, CX, EX, all the X's can absolutely affect a positive impact on whatever goals align to that mission, vision, goal statement.
Absolutely. And I even love Amanda's perspective you're going to hear today because she has spent her career in the government side. And we know there has been a lot of focus there. And we're going to talk about that today. But let me read a little bit about this rock star. As a customer experience executive, I would actually say rock star. Amanda Chavez scales human-centered design, which we love, Michael, and customer experience best practices to help organizations innovate. She started up and fostered company-wide HCD, CX, EX practices at several companies, right now at NuAxis. Additionally, her previous work includes projects with Fortune 50 companies, as well as the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And Michael, we love CMS. We love to talk about them. And the Department of Veteran Affairs, the Department of Defense, the Transportation Security Administration, the Department of Labor, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Interior, and the National Science Foundation. Most importantly, I don't want to get Amanda on our bad side because she knows a lot of people there. So we're going to bring Amanda. She's laughing at my comment there.
Oh my God. I don't know if it's possible to love a human that I've known for so short a period of time. I don't know if it's possible to love a human more.
Well, I'm sitting here reading. She's done work with the Veterans Affairs, Department of Defense, TSA. Michael, she could keep us from going out of the country.
Just really, I love that you think that, but anybody doing this work for as long as I've been doing it knows that that's, nope, the contracting side of this, nope, we have no pull, no sway on that. So you're good. You're safe, guys. You travel at will.
I still don't believe that. I'm just gonna let me believe my world right now, right?
I like it. You know, having a very creative worldview has two sides, right?
Yes. Well, I'm coming off of a breakfast meeting this morning where we spent the whole morning talking about human-centered design. So I'm a little on fire this morning around it. And your work, and in particular, I mean, you listed all those government agencies, and I'm actually talking at a healthcare conference next Monday, the Patient Experience Symposium in Boston, and giving some numbers that are staggering right now that people don't realize around CMS. And I should have even pulled this number up. We used it, I think, last week or our last show. That now 57% of metrics being used for reimbursement for CMS and for Medicare Advantage and for value-based care is going to be based around CX metrics. First time in the history that it has flopped that way. So we ask everybody this, and we got to know, Amanda, why do you do what you do, and what keeps you motivated as you do it? You've done government work for a lot of years, so. What is it?
So I know it's funny. I've been reflecting on this recently. So when I was, by the way, you know this from knowing me, the bit that you do. Good luck, because I take a really long time to answer very simple questions. But when I started off, I'm a first generation college graduate. And when I started off in the world, like I wanted to teach, right? Because that shifted the whole trajectory of my life, having access to education. And so I wanted to teach. And then when I was in, public schools, as well as then I went on to work for a state institution, a state university. And in those places, you see a lot of progress slowly made, and it really bothered me. And, I used to say, it was just like pushing against like a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of people who were very content to stay in place. And it was very difficult as somebody who, is like you're a man on fire. I'm a woman in motion, right? So I just wanted to like move things and change things. And I just found it really frustrating and difficult from the inside. And that was state and municipal government. And so I intentionally got a master's degree in public administration from the amazing George Mason University here in Fairfax, Virginia. And that, again, was another life-changing moment for me, where I got to see the power of coming in, of when industry, government contracting industry and government can work together to take. So government was, sorry, I told you this was going to be long, but government was designed to be slow, like intentionally by, the people the framers, right? It was designed so that we couldn't make fast, knee-jerk responses and decisions to external stimuli. And that works for some things, but for other things like IT modernization, for example, it helps to have that push from the industry side, which moves things a little bit faster. So what keeps me coming back is that, number one, like you just named all of the really amazing places I've had the chance to hang out. It's been amazing to see how much the government touches. Like they touch everything. You're talking about CMS, and I know healthcare is very near and dear to you. It's a matter of life and death for people. And CMS provides access to services that help to keep people alive. I know that there's a lot of things that can be improved, but TSA helps people stay safe, not just on airplanes, which is where we think of it, but for the motor coach industry, for train transportation. Like, there's so much of the invisible hand of government that affects how we live. And it's such a cool thing. Number one, the variety and the scope of what they touch is just really cool to be a part of. And number two, the difference that you can see when you're coming at it from that public-private partnership. I honestly don't get bored of that because it changes so much. And I never take it for granted what a privilege it is to be in that space. So that's the really long answer. Sorry, Shawn. Get ready, buckle in, because they're all like that.
No, I love it. Michael, yeah, you want to jump into some of our thoughts and questions and some stokes that we've pulled together?
Yeah, you want to start with our first stoke?
Yeah.
I have an anecdote too, in that if you go to the DMV in Louisville, Kentucky, at least to where I go, it is a fantastic experience.
It's
and
amazing.
So when you hear when we do things, we say, hey, name the worst possible customer experience you can have. DMV is at the top of the list for people.
Always.
Right?
Always.
That is not the case, at least the DMV that's close to me in Louisville, Kentucky. And I never did ask, like, what happened, but they have their act together. There's a greeter who checks on you when you arrive, tells you where to go, checks on you if there's a problem, answers questions for you. They've got a whole reinvented queue system. So I bring that up because it is possible, no matter what agency we're in, if the resources and the people are aligned for the right reasons, like you're talking about, great experience is possible. Right?
That's so true. What a great story.
Yeah, no matter where you are.
Yeah, because I live 2 hours up the road and don't have that experience.
That's fantastic. I'd recommend anyone going to our DMV.
I mean, in that icebreaker scenario that you mentioned, that happens in Kentucky, and it also happens in Virginia too, where when you ask for your worst CX experience, inevitably that comes up too. So that's a great story.
Yeah, there are ways to break through. Right?
Yes, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So what is our first step? Do we have it, or should I read it?
Yeah. So really, it's around, Amanda. Particularly this administration, there has been such a priority in the government
yes,
to improve CX. And we see all these, mandates coming out and people that are, saying we're going to invest dollars and dollars and dollars into this. And you work for one of those companies that private public partnership, so that the stoke is, what are the organizations that are listening well? And what are they listening for? And second to that is, and what are they doing with that information they gather from the listening? Because I think that's two big things that we need to really understand, and how this really ties into CX in the government.
So I love the questions. The first, there's a lot of, first, I want to go back to what you said initially about the CX mandate. It is priority number 2 in the president's management agenda. And I want to give a shout out to, like, what's cool about sticking around in government contracting long enough is that I found my tribe here. Like, there's a lot of people like CX 13 years ago, human-centered design, CX, employee experience. These were hard sells to the government about 13 years ago when I started getting into it. And I didn't know at the time that there were other people sort of taking that on at the same time. And it's been amazing to find those people and to work with them. And I want to give a shout out to Martha Doris, who is widely considered. She's a former GSA executive, and she now owns a consultancy, and she is widely considered the godmother of CX in the federal government. So she and a few of her peers were responsible for helping to push that initiative. So just back to your point initially, about how, change can actually happen, Michael. It was really cool to watch somebody fight as long as she's been fighting to get CX in the government, and to actually see it take shape in the Biden administration, like you mentioned, Shawn. So where it's going well, there's been people, on the private side and on the federal side who have been pushing this. And some of the earliest adopters, speaking of healthcare, were Veterans Affairs. And Barbara Morton, who runs the experience office there, has been instrumental, like from the jump. It is crazy to watch the tenacity that it takes for people who adopted this right away, and to see their perseverance in getting it to come through to the other side, where they're now, basically as long as I've been pushing this, I think she's been pushing this for a little bit longer, and watching the success that she's had, it's mind-boggling. They're an organization who's doing it really well. Sorry.
And from the public side, people are now looking at the VA and
that's
going,
amazing.
Because let's be real, right? Like 6-7 years ago, people talked about how bad the experience was for veterans, but they put so much money into it. And we were privileged to get to look behind the curtains with the project we worked on with someone who worked through the VA. Like, they just doubled down. There was no choice. And so to see how far they've come in a short amount of time, can say you can do it. And you can do it fast in a government agency. And if you can do it fast in a government agency, you sure can do it fast.
I love it. And that's so cool to hear, that you've heard of it too, on the citizen side, that you've heard that too. And you're, especially considering how far your reach is. That's so cool to hear. There are or I would say that they're sort of like the gold star beacon right now. There's other places, though, that are really catching up. I would say IRS is one of them. There's Ken Corbin there, who is the chief experience officer in that organization. And what's really cool is that, just like Barbara Morton and her organization, he's really getting infrastructure lined up to support that shift. And that's really critical. And then you have places too, like USDA, and the chief experience officer there too. It all starts kind of the same way. Like it's really scrappy. I think for anybody doing this work, like we all kind of have a lot of similar stories. But I think hers started off as a very lean organization too, and I think that she's really putting together some amazing tools to be able to listen to the customers and to feed that back into the organization. And there's also the Department of Labor too, who is really trying to put customer experience at the center of what they're offering. They have more. I feel like too, people don't know how much depth and reach some of these organizations have. I think VA kind of speaks for itself, and certainly IRS. I think all of us are pretty acquainted with IRS, or should be, or we're like behind bars because we're not acquainted with IRS. But USDA, like that's every single thing that we consume. Has USDA has touched. Department of Labor. That's the reason that we have like the weekend, and the reason that we have like safety and ethical standards in place. Like they touch a lot. And so for them to put an emphasis on it too, they're not the only ones. These are just some examples, I think, of where it's really starting to go well, and starting to, or not starting, but either starting to take off, or setting the pace for other organizations. GSA, I would be remiss, because Martha started at GSA. They're definitely leading the charge on this as well.
Well, and we've gotten some great feedback here. The VA is amazing. My experience has been very positive, focused, and efficient compared to my experience with private healthcare.
That's beautiful.
Yes, and you can't forget this. Like, hey, look at Amanda. You've got some followers. Hey, Amanda, thought I would check in and hear you.
Oh my God, Denise!
And then bring on Amanda. Like, we got people all over the place.
You guys are so kind.
And then we have a Yay Martha. So Dominic and he.
Dominic.
yeah, like he's given us some great stuff around the GSA. So,
That's awesome.
All right. So, Michael, I'll read this one because this was a fun one that I put together with Amanda. So consider a simple ROI calculation, right? So, Michael, you love these, the calculations of moving. So we're going to talk about a store, right? And we found this great analogy through Harvard Business Review, Amanda and I did. Moving a store from its bottom quartile to the top quartile. The store currently spends $16 an hour and generates $41 in profits. So they spend $16 but generate $41 in profits. By investing additional $12 per hour to get the top quartile of employee experience, the store will earn an extra $18 per hour of profit. So that's 150% ROI. So moving from $16 to $28 an hour will generate $59 in profit. So, in your opinion, Amanda, does this type of metric and number when dealing with the federal government and CX in the federal government matter?
Yes, more than you think. The government right now is pretty. This is a very timely conversation because it just came out in the New York Times just published, and I hope I sound smart by saying that, but the New York Times published an article this morning.
You do. You sound very smart.
Thank you. That's what I was hoping for, Michael. Thank you. But no, they did. It happens to be very timely given this conversation, but they published an article this morning talking about how trust in government is, it's not high. It is the opposite. And that's been consistent since the Watergate era. We kind of lost our innocence as a country in our belief in, the infallibility of government. But it's low now for various and sundry reasons. And that metric, the how the government spends its money is under close watch more than you can believe. And most of the federal leaders that we work with are very, very concerned about how they can maximize impact for fewer dollars, because there's a lot of oversight and transparency. It may shock you to learn, but there is a lot of oversight and transparency.
As it should be. Right? Like this is not like a negative. We want this.
We do want this. You're absolutely right. So they are really the leaders of these organizations at all across these organizations are constantly concerned about how they can add value to the citizens for, fewer dollars, because they're accountable for that. Right. And like you said, Michael, we as taxpayers, we deserve that. So they really are looking at this. So a lot of that president's management agenda is asking for more transparency in the customer experience metrics about how we're doing across the government, offering the best customer experience to citizens. So I think that it is more pertinent and more top of mind than I think, unless you're working in this industry, then I think the average citizen might be aware of, just based on the fact that the trust scores are so low.
So much there.
There is so much there, right? Well, going back to I'm sorry. Did you want to?
My question is, in our experience in the retail industry, meaning big box store retail industry, one of the big things that I learned, and it was a blessing to be a part of it, just for all the things we were able to learn firsthand. But my big learning was that you can take an underperforming store, and the executive leadership knew that if they took the manager from this high performing store and just dropped that person into the low performing store, they didn't have to put any more energy into it, any more resources. There were no pizza parties. There were no like plans to do better. There was nothing. They just replaced the manager with someone they knew that would be successful. And within 6 weeks, complete transformation, both in terms of revenue and in terms of all their scores. I mean, every metric on the dashboard had improved, right? And so it's always a big testament of leadership versus financial resources, right? Or other resources. So am I right to hear in what you're saying that it's the person investment, not necessarily the financial investment?
You have awesome analogies, Michael. I think that's exactly right. I mean, even working in the private sector, organizations take on the personality of the leadership. I don't think you can possibly discount that. Also, too, I think the really good leaders understand what you just illustrated so well in that example, that when you invest in the employees, and Martha, speaking of Martha Doris, she says this too. So all my friends who are on the call, please tell Martha I said really nice things about her. But Martha has this expression, that the happier your employees are, the happier your customers are. And it's such common sense, uncommonly practiced. We've swung so far on the industry side, and I think with the Great Resignation and the reemergence of the labor movement, I think it's starting to swing back. But we're starting to understand what is, I think, implicitly understood. But we're starting to put it back into business, that if you take care of your employees, they will take care of your customers. And again, I just want to say it again, that's common sense, quite uncommonly practiced. Although, like I said, I'm glad to see that it's starting to shift. And it's certainly true in these organizations, these federal organizations that are investing heavily in the customer experience. What you tend to see is that they're also equally investing in the employee experience, which is they get it. And that's right.
There's so much wasted money in customer experience, and employee experience, and patient experience, right?
Yes.
I mean, the basic concept there is let's throw them in more pizza parties and that'll make them happy, right? I mean, like we work with people who think that, right?
Yeah.
So people get their pizza, they go back to their desks and they bitch and moan with the person next to them.
Exactly. Yep.
So it does come down to leadership.
Well,
it absolutely does.
And I've said it this way, Amanda, and I'm going to be saying it from the platform on Monday. If you get the human experience right, you'll get the numbers you need. You'll meet the metrics you need. And I try not to always tout and talk about it, but you see it and it's all around me. I learned that at Disney. And I give, and Michael and I had the honor of, having Lee Cockerell on our podcast, Combustion Chronicles. Lee was that leader. What's scary, and I think this is where we have to really learn in the industry, in my opinion, and is how do you culturally embed it so when that leader leaves, right? Like, because that is the hard thing. Disney is who they are because it's culturally embedded. There's other brands we've taught, right wherever you fall with Chick-fil-A, people know this is what's expected when you work at Chick-fil-A. This is the culture, and this is what happens. This is what you do. You go into a Ritz-Carlton, you go into a Hilton. All of them have their ways of saying it. My concern, and this is just being on the political side of it, is we have an agenda where it's second priority for our current seated president.
Yep.
In 2 years, we have an election.
We do.
Does that agenda change, or are we culturally embedding it within these organizations so that it significantly stays there? Or is it, where Michael and I talk about it, is it just another waste of millions of dollars to check a box versus culturally changed?
Damn it, that's such a good question. And I want to, no, I love it. I love it. That is the question. And what I'm very happy to tell you is that, number one, going back to Barbara Morton, who was an early adopter of this, that work started in the Obama era, and it continued through the Trump administration, and it continues today. That's also back to my initial point too about how government was set up. It was designed to not make, hair trigger decisions, right? So when you're building that infrastructure and putting it in place, it's not in every example, but in many examples, it's difficult to dismantle once it is actually in place. Also, I think this would be something that would be like delightful to hear too, is that this policy actually started as the A11 policy under the Trump administration. And so with our, former president and his business background, there was an emphasis on delivering government services in a commercialized way, the same as you get in the private sector. And we're like HCD and CX people. So I'm sure we use this all the time. Like anytime we're doing a workshop and people are, you're taking ideas from other organizations, what comes up? Apple, the FANGs, right? Like Facebook, Apple, Google, Netflix, et cetera. Like that's what, the last administration was trying to reform government organizations to get them in that direction. And it continues now across party lines with the Biden administration, because there are some things that I hope are immutable, right? As we move forward in administrations, like giving, Veterans Affairs is a great example. Like who wants to deny care to veterans, right? Like that's an immutable thing that will, go forward agnostic of administration. Providing a better experience to citizens, I think that that's something that has, current bipartisan support for. And I would hope that that's, again, just sort of like something that's immutable that would move forward into the future.
But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, no, you, for real, you.
So I guess what I hear so often, though, is yes, we want to do it. Great. Mm-hmm. Like, so even if these different administrations want to do it, do they know how? And so many misguided leaders and executives, and that goes back to checking the box. They think they're doing it, but they're really not.
Preach. Yes, of course. And
so how did in this context, how did they get it right? Like what's the takeaway there?
So I mean, in terms of how they got it right, going back to square one, and the government is, for the people that I've name dropped and listed here, it's a really good example of how you get successful, I think, across industry. Like you just don't give up. You push that boulder up a mountain until you get to the other side, and all of a sudden it rolls for you. And that is, I think, the lesson of anybody who's been doing this in government, either on the private side or the public side, for as long as, we've been doing it. Like, you persist and you will, outlast any of these external environmental factors just by belief. To get to the point, to address the other point you made too about are some people just checking the box with this? Yup, for now, right? But I will say this, we are everywhere now. And I know this from my colleagues in the private sector who are a part of other government contractors, which we will not name on this call. I'll name drop anybody, but not those people. But no, I mean, though, we're all we're everywhere. We are everywhere. And what's the best part of it is that on the private side, we're starting to get smart and embed this into how we practice, the work of modernizing government. It's embedded in the private side in a lot of different companies to try to bring it into the public side. So I do really have confidence. All of that's to say, I do really have confidence that this is not a fad and it's not something that will easily go away, because there are so many true believers who are willing to continue to push. And I know this because we've been pushing for a long time, and it's finally, we're having a moment now. Those of us who've been working in the federal space for this, we're finally having a moment. Yes, there's evidence.
Yeah. And I liked it. I love this. Lawrence says, is the rate of government change fast enough to accommodate the CX agendas put forward by an administration? It will if the civil service leadership at each government department buys into the promise of CX.
Lawrence is just such a Lawrence. You guys don't know Lawrence, but he's amazing. But that's such a you're right, Lawrence.
And it's moving. I think what Lawrence is saying is what we're saying here. It's moving from checking the box to it really being embedded. And so I know we can keep talking about this, and we are already 40 minutes into this show, which is a little over our time. And Amanda, we will have you back, and we'll talk more about this because I think we're really interested in what's doing that. And as an industry, how do we help support those of you that have been on those front lines doing it? How do we now come in behind and help support you in making this successful? Because you're right, we all want better experience for citizens, and by God, if it's one thing that can unite all of us and get us all talking about one thing, then let's at least do that.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, yes, 100%.
Well, Amanda, I know people can a matter of fact, mine and Amanda's friendship started via LinkedIn. So
it did.
Get on LinkedIn, go follow Amanda, go follow Michael and myself. And Amanda, if you'll hang out, Michael and I are going to close up, and then we'll come back and say bye to you for a little bit.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was a delight. You two are always a delight to talk with. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. Thank you.
All right, Michael, just a couple last things, right? Like, if you want to get a hold of us and learn more about what we do at Mofi, mofi.co, or you can go to ShawnNason.com. You can always send us an email at hello@mofi.co. As we mentioned, the Combustion Chronicles, our podcast, just launched season 7 with some amazing leaders who are talking about the good, bad, and ugly and what's happening. Connect with us on LinkedIn. But most importantly, if you play in this experience ecosystem, we want you here on the show. Send us a note, send it, find us on LinkedIn, however. But we are really looking forward to the next show. And Michael, I hope you have a great weekend, cheering on at least some of your teams to at least try to get through the weekend.
I don't know. It's a sad way to start the season.
So, all right. And we will see you all on the 30th. Bye.